Okay, project life cycles. What are the project phases in SAP? And in SAP, the project is no rocket science. Okay. When we go for the implementation, before the implementation, there are many phases. Okay. Uh, by phases, I mean there is a client side or a client company. Now, a client company can be manufacturing or services industry or any other domain. We have at client side, we have a principal heads of departments or head of executions. That includes finance, that includes inventory, that includes HR, engineering, production, marketing, sales, coordination, outreach, e-commerce, okay, and various others. Now, once the company, the client actually realizes that once the company realizes that the present systems are not coordinating well enough or are not business forward, okay, then they actually decide to change the systems or replace the systems or change over. It can be any phase. It can be any decision for improving the systems or replacing the systems altogether. Okay. Now, how do we change, replace, or change over? But before they actually move and migrate to this decision of changing and replacing the whole systems, they have to first establish the understanding. Okay. Understanding of the current systems as to what are the processes, the molecular processes of each department, what processes are essentials, what are necessary, what are road blockages, road blocking processes, okay, and what gaps in the present systems are pushing the entire company to go for a new systems or when we talk about gaps, what are the opportunities that are getting missed? Okay. Now, all of these elements of the whole structure, the whole machinery of the entire client side basically has a certain financial weight. Okay. Either you're earning from it or you're being stopped in the middle because of using that system. When the benefit versus loss analysis is done, if the system is proving to be heavyweight in terms of carrying it forward, the cost of carrying it along or moving it along is much more than the profit, okay, then of course you need a new system. So uh, cost benefit analysis is done at the management level, but how do we reach at this point? For this, the HODs of every department will actually sit down with their teams and collect all the process.
काइंडली सर उर्दू में कर लें बात उर्दू में
Okay, and teams collect processes. For example, if I sit down as an HOD or as a finance manager, okay, what will be the prime responsibility? The prime responsibility will be to understand and clearly collect processes for chart of accounts. What are chart of accounts? Group of accounts. And group of accounts means collection of all accounts that is dealing with assets, liabilities, income, payables, receivables, maintenance, expenses, equity, goodwill, machinery, property, office equipment, inventory, and within inventory, I'll have raw materials, semi-finished goods, finished goods. Okay. My prime responsibility will be to collect whatever the process is being executed within the entire system. Okay. Now, to understand the system, of course, you will need the team, everyone to be involved to collect the processes. Now, for example, to make it much more simple, I'll say how journal entries are passed. Simple debit and credit, right? Simple debit and credit for any expense or um, petty cash voucher. Simple. That is a very simple molecular process that I'm talking, which has no significance if we look at the entirety of the entire organization. But as a finance manager, that will be the responsibility to collect every molecular details. Same will go with the inventory department, where they will collect processes for inventory movement, inventory consumption, inventory storage, treatment of inventory blocking, plus QA, plus storage to plant, plant to plant, movement of the inventory. Okay. Plus on that, vendor management, very important. There are various kinds of vendors. Long-term pipeline vendors, which means they have to maintain continuous supplies. Just a second, guys. Okay, so we have pipeline vendors, that those vendors that have to maintain and ensure continuous supplies, like in oil and gas, like in beverage industry or chemical industry. Then we have regular vendors, okay, trusted vendors, one-time vendors, foreign vendors, banks, employees, local vendors, and then we have classifications for filer, non-filer, okay, cash vendors, or there are in cash vendors, of course, we have people who would actually supply you like scrap material, or vendors that are also customers, okay, subcontractors. Again, that is another very big area in SAP as a subject. Okay, so as an inventory manager, these are the areas, broadly speaking, not all, but broadly speaking. So if a company is planning, for example, a company like um, Kia Motors, it's planning to introduce an ERP, not SAP, but ERP in general. It has to collect all the processes at one place. And that documentation of all the processes is mandated and driven by the management. spearheaded by the management. And that collection of all processes in that one document is called the blueprint document. And this might not be the most perfect version or reflection of the current system, because an ERP consultant has a different level approach to understanding how the system works. So this is the first phase. Okay. And this can be like 500 to 700 pages of a document. And this is always classified, because this actually reflects and tells each and every process of a company that makes it a success or a failure, whatever be the reason. So it should not actually land with unauthorized people, like people who might actually leak it to the investors so that the company might fail completely, or to the competitors. Okay. Once this blueprint document is in place, okay, then they invite consulting companies. Okay. Consulting co's are invited, like KPMG, VAUSNET, EY, Accenture, to actually give demos on the system, whatever they propose, be it Oracle, NetSuite, Odoo, SAP, QuickBooks. It could be anything, right? Zero, whatever seems fit for the consulting company. Now, the demos basically are backed with the research on this document. So a part of this document is released, that is called the scope of the project. But before the scope is understood of the entire project, this is basically to establish understanding with the consulting companies, the comfort level, not the comfort zone, but the comfort level has to be established. Why? Because companies will actually come with their experts, analysts, project managers, change managers, because change management is a tough area. Why? Because not everyone welcomes the execution of projects, because people are avert to change, and they are very anxious for job aversion, for job loss, or role changing. So if there is a change in role, people are actually very conscious of that, and they think that their jobs are at risk. And if majority of your workforce, okay, develops this feeling that the company might actually terminate them, or remove them, or replace them, then of course the system will not get implemented. And this is where the change management becomes very vital, very pivotal, and fundamental. And if most of the workforce opposes the system implementations or replacement of a system, then a whole project can fail, even by big companies like KPMG, Accenture, EY. Even these companies will also fail in the face of workforce resistance. Okay, and if the workforce, in a unified manner, if they resign and leave the company and walk away, that will actually bring the whole company down. And that is an immense cost. Okay. Monstrosity of this system basically has to be relayed and communicated with the stakeholders. So everyone is a stakeholder in a company, because everyone is contributing in growing the company, in moving the business forward. Okay. So once the demos, now these are technical functional demos that are conducted by consulting companies. Now I'll wrap up this discussion. Once the demos are done, the companies will then ask for bidding proposals, RFPs. Okay, RFPs will include technical and functional bids that will include implementation costs, profiles of the consultants, plus infrastructure, which includes the hardware and the software cost. Okay. the maintenance, timelines, okay, the dates specifically, okay, and it will also outline the phases. Now, what are the phases in SAP project? Project phases are kickoff. Once the consulting company is selected, the bid is selected, there are various elements and factors that go into the selection of a consulting company. Cost is never the issue for a big company because they have the budget, they are rich in cash flows. Okay, so it's not the cost, is always the quality, the delivery, the execution. Okay. After the kickoff, there is a zero level training, or call it meeting, where teams basically start collaborating. In zero level, they get an understanding, an overview, a brief overview of what SAP is and how it can be, how it can contribute to a system's business growing forward. After the zero level, then starts the business blueprinting, where as is, what is as is the present model of the company versus the 2B. Now, 2B is where experts, ERP experts, or system architects. Now, what is a system architect? The senior most SAP consultant who has knowledge of the domain plus SAP. And of course, he carries the understanding of the entire system. Those people, those consultants actually come together and they compile the 2B. Now, what is 2B and as is? As is means the present model. 2B is what is going to be offered and configured in SAP. Okay. And in 2B process, of course, this is a very critical area. In 2B process, not all processes of the current system will be mapped. So 100% mapping is impossible. Okay. It can match like 80%, and the rest, 20%, will be identified as gaps or unnecessary or for phase 2. Okay. We have to categorize. We have to segment these areas of understanding these processes. The gaps, basically, if we talk about the gaps, now these gaps are to be filled by customization, and customization is done with the help of ABAP consultants. Okay. Now, gaps, basically, these are some processes that are not encouraged or developed or available with SAP within the system. Then, and if those processes are pure necessary, essential for the company to survive and move forward, those are identified as gaps and have to be moved in and configured or customized within SAP module. So once your 2B, which has all of this findings, okay, along with the gaps, these are collected and the blueprint phase is finalized, and this is signed off by the stakeholders. Okay, the HODs, the management, everyone that is involved, the managers, the project directors, they are basically responsible for overlooking and supervising for the execution and delivery of the entire system. Okay, and they have to make sure that the system runs smoothly with the aspirations, and that the entire organization will also get aligned with the system, because the system has its own, might be difficult or complex. The company will have to adjust, the stakeholders will have to adjust and mold and upgrade. So after blueprint, we have the realization phase. Now, realization phase is the configuration testing phase, where you just play around with new processes, configure them, test them, and move it from the development or play server to the QA server. Okay. After that, when the configuration moves to the QA server, we have the next phase, which is called the UAT phase, which is user acceptance testing, where the stakeholders, HODs, power users, management will actually accept or reject the collection of all the processes that have been configured in the system. If 80% of it is, or maybe 70% of it is all good and signed off, then the SAP team or the ERP consultants will move to the next part, that is where they start moving or migrating the data. Okay. Preparation for go live. So in preparation, we have uploads, migration, data cleansing, and reconciliation. And this is moved from QA server to pre-production server. Okay. In pre-production, of course, everything is done. Preparation is done. Reconciliation has to be done for inventory, for finance, for every department, that each and everything has been moved. Okay. And after the preparation, we have pre-go live testing. That is a phase, a cool down phase or a blackout phase where the entire company shut down, because in production, of course, there are production orders that get issued, and those actually get collected and get accumulated to be backlogs. And those backlogs have to be filled in within immediately after the go live. Okay. Pre-go live testing happens. And in pre-go live testing, every department, every process is basically checked again, rechecked, because issues come in. There can be errors in the system while the configuration gets moved from QA to PRD server. So after this is okay, which is again a soft testing, then it is the go live phase. Okay. In go live, of course, it is the pre-PRD, pre-production server, that becomes the PRD server. Okay. The pre-PRD server becomes a backup of the previous system's data, the configuration, the backlogs, and everything. The big data is basically in the pre-PRD server, and the PRD server is then handed over to the team. Okay. The operational team. Okay. And once the go live is done, the 2 weeks are the most critical, most crucial phase of a project to be either a success or a failure. So 2 weeks are very, very intensive, very, very nerve breaking, because over here the consultant's knowledge is also tested, and there can be friction between the local management, the team, the operational team, and the consulting team. And after 2 weeks, of course, after 2 weeks, there is a 2 month to 6 month support, post go live support program. That is again part of the clause of the entire project. So that's how this gets implemented. So there is no rocket science and there is no silver bullet, neither there is a pattern that is to be followed. So it's not scientific, it's an art, plus it's also a science. Okay, now coming to the enterprise structure. Let me just. Okay, now we are at the front end of SAP. We will actually carry forward our discussion as to what is the front end and what comprises in the front end of SAP. But first, let me just access the backend SPRO. Now, this is where we access the backend for the configuration. I'll be configuring the first unit of the enterprise. Okay. And for that, I will have to maintain a mother company, and that is available in the node enterprise structure. In this part, in this backend, we have all of the modules configuration that is available to us, both functional and technical. So enterprise structure definition, we are going to define a company. We'll define a company, and then I will actually tell you how to practice your SAP lectures. Okay, new entries. SDQT will take up Sadakat Textile, Sadakat Textiles Private Limited. Sadakat Private Limited. Pudiyawala 3595 3595. Faisalabad PK English currency. Currency PKR. or currency can be USD, because the high level reporting at the mother group level or mother company level will be in USD for group of companies. Okay. Okay. Over here we have SDMM config start T82. This is our 82nd batch. Okay, now we have configured and we have like 2 minutes. Let's come back to the discussion of how to of okay. Now I will stop my recording because this is something classified.